Puvulagan Nanbargal, also a member of the Tamil Nadu Governing Council for Climate Change. Welcome, sir. He is someone who actively contributes to state-level policies on climate resilience, on waste management and natural resource conservation. So we're going to get his expertise in this upcoming session, whether it is policy advocacy, whether it's activism, whether it's sustainable initiatives. He's always been an integral part. And of course, joining us on this panel, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. V. Thirupugar, IAS Avargal, Chairman, Advisory Panel to the Mitigation and Management of Flood Risk in Chennai. We also have Dr. J. Radhakrishnan, IAS Avargal, joining us, Additional Chief Secretary, Cooperation, Food and Consumer Protection, Tamil Nadu. Welcome, sir. Joining us this session, we also have Ms. Karina Malzesqua, WASH Specialist from UNICEF India. A round of applause. And our final speaker this session, Mr. Binu Matthew, Chief Operating Officer at the Tharu Leading Edge. Check, check. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome ma'am, welcome sir. As we get ready for this particular session, we also have truly a proud moment that's going to take the stage in a virtual way. When we talk about Tamil Nadu, we know we've been taking a lot of bold steps when it comes to environmental leadership. One such inspiring initiative is the Chief Minister's Green Fellowship Program. It was launched by the Department of Environment and Climate Change, and this is a program that provides that platform for passionate young minds, that rare opportunity to work directly with the state government on critical environmental issues. We're going to have a short video showcasing their journey so far, followed by a very interesting launch. If I may request your attention to the screen, may we have the AV, please.
காலநிலை மாற்றம் தற்போது எதிர்கொள்ள முடியாத சிக்கலாக மாறி வருகிறது. இயற்கை சூழல், மனித உயிர்கள் மற்றும் பொருளாதார செயல்பாடுகள் மீது தாக்கத்தை ஏற்படுத்துகிறது. தற்போது இந்த சிக்கலை எதிர்கொள்ள தமிழ்நாட்டின் மாண்புமிகு முதலமைச்சரின் வழிகாட்டுதலுடன் உருவாக்கப்பட்டதுதான் முதலமைச்சரின் பசுமை புத்தாய்வு திட்டம். இந்தியாவிலேயே முதன்முறையாக உருவாக்கப்பட்டுள்ள இத்திட்டத்தின் மூலம் இளைய தலைமுறையினர் காலநிலை மாற்றம் குறித்து அறிந்து கொள்வதற்கும் அதனால் ஏற்படும் பாதிப்புகளை எதிர்கொள்வதற்கும் தமிழ்நாட்டின் பல்வேறு துறைகளில் இருந்து தேர்ந்தெடுக்கப்பட்ட 40 திறமையான பசுமை தோழர்கள் நியமிக்கப்பட்டுள்ளனர். இத்திட்டத்தின் கீழ் பசுமை தோழர்கள் தமிழ்நாட்டில் உள்ள அனைத்து மாவட்ட நிர்வாகங்களுடன் இணைந்து காலநிலை மாற்றம் மற்றும் இயற்கையை பாதுகாத்தல் போன்ற செயல்பாடுகளின் மூலம் தமிழகத்தை காலநிலை மீள்திறன்மிக்க மாநிலமாக மாற்றுவதில் பெரும் பங்காற்றுகின்றனர். இத்திட்டம் இளைய சமுதாயத்தில் ஆர்வத்தை தூண்டி அவர்களின் வாழ்வில் பெரும் தாக்கத்தை ஏற்படுத்துவது மட்டுமல்லாமல் வருங்கால இளைய சந்ததியினரை காலநிலை மாற்றத்திற்கு எதிரான செயல்பாடுகளில் தங்களை அர்ப்பணிக்க வழிவகை செய்கின்றது. மேலும் அரசின் சிறப்புமிக்க 4 முக்கிய இயக்கங்களான தமிழ்நாடு காலநிலை மாற்ற இயக்கம், பசுமை தமிழ்நாடு இயக்கம், தமிழ்நாடு ஈரநிலை இயக்கம் மற்றும் நெய்தல் மீட்சி இயக்கம் ஆகிய இயக்கங்களின் மூலம் காலநிலை சவால்களை எதிர்கொள்ளுதல், தமிழ்நாட்டின் பசுமை பரப்பை அதிகரித்து உயிர் பன்மையத்தை மேம்படுத்துதல், நீர்நிலைகளை பாதுகாத்தல், தமிழ்நாட்டின் கடற்கரை ஒட்டிய பகுதிகளை பாதுகாத்தல் மற்றும் மேம்படுத்துதல் போன்ற பணிகளுக்கு உறுதுணையாக செயலாற்றும் வகையில் இத்திட்டம் செயல்பட்டு வருகிறது. இத்திட்டத்தின் மூலம் தமிழ்நாட்டில் பொதுமக்கள் மத்தியில் சுற்றுச்சூழல் குறித்த விழிப்புணர்வு ஏற்படுத்தும் வகையில் மீண்டும் மஞ்சப்பை பரப்புரைகள், பசுமை வாக்குச்சாவடிகள், பசுமை பள்ளிகள், பசுமை நாட்களை கொண்டாடுதல், நெகிழி ஒழிப்பு முன்னெடுப்புகளுக்கு துணை நிற்றல், அரசு அலுவலர்கள், பொதுமக்கள், பள்ளி மற்றும் கல்லூரி மாணவர்களிடையே காலநிலை மாற்றம் குறித்த விழிப்புணர்வுகளை மேற்கொள்ள இத்திட்டம் வழிவகை செய்கிறது. இளைய தலைமுறையினரை கொண்டு செயல்படுத்தப்படும் இத்திட்டம் வருங்காலங்களில் தமிழ்நாட்டை நிலையான மற்றும் காலநிலை மாற்றத்தை எதிர்கொள்ளக்கூடிய ஒரு முன்னோடி திட்டமாக திகழ்கிறது.
Ladies and gentlemen, a one-of-a-kind power combination of the youth empowerment movement and sustainability. We now have a very special launch taking place on stage. To join us and to lead the launch, I'd like to welcome, with a round of applause from all of us in the audience, Dr. P. Senthilkumar, IAS Avargal, Principal Secretary to Government, Environment, Climate Change and Forest Department. Welcome, sir. It's also my pleasure to invite onto the stage Thiru A.R. Rahulnath, IAS Avargal, Director, Department of Environment and Climate Change, Government of Tamil Nadu. I'd also like to extend a very special welcome to Dr. R. Saravanan, Professor, Institute for Energy Studies, Anna University. And joining us on stage, a very special welcome to Dr. Venkat Ramanan, Director, Institute for Energy Studies, Anna University. Welcome, sirs. With our upcoming launch, ladies and gentlemen, I'd also like to invite our speakers and our session chair to join us as we bring to the fore a very special resource. This is the Compendium of Best Practices for Environmental Sustainability and Climate Change Adaptation in Tamil Nadu. It's been compiled by the Green Fellows, or it's been compiled by very critical members from the Chief Minister's Green Fellowship Program, being launched right here at the Tamil Nadu Climate Summit 3.0. Ladies and gentlemen, a nice round of applause as we welcome this very integral resource. This is also an interesting gateway for all of us to understand the environmental missions of the government itself. Extending a very special thanks to our guests on stage. And with that, we jump right in. Climate change and disaster resilience. We've kind of set the stage already. I'd like to hand the floor over to our session chair to take forward. Good afternoon, sir.
அனைவருக்கும் வணக்கம். பொதுவாக சாப்பிட்டதுக்கப்புறம் ஒரு செஷனை கண்டக்ட் பண்ணுறது பெரிய டிசாஸ்டர். அதுவும் டிசாஸ்டரை பற்றி ஒரு செஷன் கண்டக்ட் பண்ணுறது டபுள் வேமின்னு நினைக்கிறேன். பட் ஸ்டில் இங்கே இருக்கின்ற 4 மிக மிக முக்கியமான ஆளுமைகளும் தங்களுடைய அனுபவங்களை பகிர்ந்து கொள்ள இருக்கிறார்கள். பொதுவாக இன்றைக்கி நிறைய மாணவ மாணவியர் வந்ததுக்கான விஷயத்தை நான் சொல்கிறேன். புவியோட வரலாற்றை நீங்கள் எழுதணுன்னா எப்படி எழுதுனீங்கன்னா, பொது ஆண்டு அல்லது பொது ஆண்டுக்கு முன்பாக, காமன் எரா ஆர் பிஃபோர் காமன் எரா அப்படின்னு நம்மளோட எர்த்தோட ஹிஸ்ட்ரி எதுனா அப்படி தான் நம்ம எழுதுவோம். ஆனால் மனிதகுல வரலாற்றை நீங்கள் எழுத வேண்டும் என்றால் 2024க்கு முன் 2024க்கு பின் அப்படித்தான் எழுதணும்னு சொல்லி சமீபத்திய ஆய்வுகள் நமக்கு சொல்லுது. ப்ரீ கிளைமேட் எரா அண்ட் போஸ்ட் கிளைமேட் எரா. இந்த மனிதர்கள் இந்த 10,000 ஆண்டுகளாகத்தான் ஒரு இடத்துல தங்கி வாழ்ந்து விவசாயம் செய்து கிராமங்களாக, குடிகளாக, சிறு நகரங்களாக, பெருநகரங்களாக, மாநிலங்களாகவும் நாடுகளாகவும் மாறிக்கும். இந்த 10,000 வருஷம்தான். இந்த 10,000 வருஷத்துக்கு முன்னாடி புவியோட சராசரி வெப்ப அளவு +10லேருந்து -10 வரைக்கும் வேரி ஆனனால நம்மளால் ஒரு இடத்துல வாழ்ந்து ஒரு விவசாயம் செய்து நம்மால் இங்கே வாழ முடியவில்லை. இந்த 10,000 ஆண்டுகளாகத்தான் நம் மனித இனம் ஒரு இடத்தில் வாழ்ந்து விவசாயம் செய்து நாடுகளாகி இன்ற மாடர்ன் சொசைட்டியில் சொன்னோம்னா நேஷன்ஸ் ஹவ் பீன் பார்ன் only because the temperatures were hovering between +1 and -1 degrees. 1 டிகிரி செல்சியஸ் கூட போகும், இல்லை 1 டிகிரி செல்சியஸ் கம்மியாக வரும், அவ்வளோதான். இந்த 10,000 11,000 ஆண்டுகள் அப்படி தான் இருந்துச்சு. ஆனால் மனிதகுல வரலாற்றில் முதல் முறையாக 2024ஆம் ஆண்டு தான் இந்த புவியின் சராசரி வெப்ப அளவு 1.5 டிகிரி செல்சியஸை தொட்டுவிட்டதாக உலக வானிலை நிறுவனம் அறிவித்து விட்டது. அந்த 2024 ஏன் வாட்டர் ஷெட் இயர் நாம் சொல்கிறோம்னா, ஏன் மனிதகுல வரலாற்றை 2024க்கு முன் 2024க்கு பின் என்று பிரிக்க வேண்டும் என்று சொல்கிறோம்னா, இந்த 2024ஆம் ஆண்டு தான் முதல் முறையாக இந்த மனிதகுல வரலாற்றில் முதல் முறையாக மனித இனம் 1.5 டிகிரி செல்சியஸ் எப்படி இருக்கும் என்பதை உணர்ந்த ஆண்டு 2024. இதுக்கு நமக்கு தெரியவே தெரியாது. ஹியூமனிட்டி இஸ் இன் அன்சார்ட்டட் டெரிட்டரி. மனித இனம், மனித குலம் இதுவரைக்கும் தான் சந்தித்திராத ஒரு இடத்தை நோக்கி, ஒரு வாழ்வு இடத்தை நோக்கி சென்று கொண்டிருக்கிறது என்பதை 2024 நம்முள் பதிய சென்று உள்ளது என்பதை தயவு செய்து புரிந்து கொள்ள வேண்டும். நீங்கள் இங்கே நிறைய யங்ஸ்டர்ஸ் வந்திருக்கீங்க. நீங்கள் எங்களை சபிக்கலாம். நீங்கள் மேடையில் இருக்க நீங்கள் தாண்டா அந்த பூமியை கெடுத்த தலைமுறையை சேர்ந்தவர்கள், நீங்கள் எங்களை சபிக்கலாம். நாங்கள் அதை மறுக்கலை. நாங்கள் மறுக்கவே இல்லை. ஆம், நாங்கள் தான் இந்த புவியை கெடுத்த தலைமுறையை சேர்ந்தவர்கள் என்பதை ஏற்றுக்கொள்வதில் எங்கள் எந்த தயக்கம் கிடையாது. ஆனால் இது உங்கள் பூமி, இது உங்கள் வாழ்விடம். எங்ககிட்டேருந்து நீங்கள் எப்படி பறிச்சுக்க போகிறீங்க, இந்த உங்கள் பூமியை எப்படி காப்பாற்ற போகிறீங்க என்பது தான் இந்த புவியில் மனித குலம் நீடித்து நினைக்க முடியுமா என்பதை தீர்மானிக்க போகின்ற ஆண்டுகளாக வரக்கூடிய ஆண்டுகள் இருக்க போகின்றன என்பதை நாம் தயவு செய்து நினைவில் கொள்ள வேண்டும். இன்னைக்கு நாம் புவியோட கார்பன் எமிஷனை 0 ஆக்குனா கூட, இன்னைக்கு உலகம் கார்பன் சமநிலை அடைந்தால் கூட புவியின் சராசரி வெப்பநிலை 1.5 ஏறி அதற்கும் அதிகரித்து நாம் கடுமையான விளைவுகளை சந்திக்க போகின்றோம் என்று சொல்கிறது அறிவியல். இந்த விஷயத்தை நாம் புரிஞ்சுக்கணும். ஏன் இந்த டிசாஸ்டர் ரெசிலியன்ஸ், இந்த பேரிடர் மீள்திறன் என்கிற ஒரு செஷன் ரொம்ப முக்கியம் என்றால், நம்மால் எவ்வளவுதான் கார்பன் எமிஷனை 0 ஆக்கினா கூட அதிகரிக்கும் புயல்கள், வெப்ப அலைகள், வெள்ளம், காட்டுத்தீ, வறட்சி போன்ற பேடர்கள் நம்மை சூழ்ந்து கொண்டு தான் இருக்க போகின்றன. இதை நம்ம தப்பிக்கவே முடியாது. இந்த புதிய இயல்புக்கு, இந்த நியூ நார்மலுக்கு எப்படி நம்மை நாம் தகவைத்துக் கொள்ள போகிறோம்? How are we going to adapt to this new normal? இந்த புதிய இயல்புக்கு மனித சமூகமாக, தமிழகமாக, தமிழ்நாடாக எப்படி நாம் நம்மை தகவமைத்துக் கொள்ள போகிறோம் என்பதைத்தான் தமிழ்நாடு காலநிலை மீள்திறன் கொண்ட மாநிலமாக மாறுமா மாறாத என்பதை தீர்மானிக்கப் போகிறது என்பதை நான் இங்கே சொல்ல கடமைப்பட்டுள்ளேன். பில்டிங் ரெசிலியன்ஸ் இஸ் நாட் ஜஸ்ட் அபவுட் இன்ஃப்ராஸ்ட்ரக்சர். மீள்திறன் கொண்ட மாநிலமாக மாற்றுவது என்பது கட்டமைப்புகளை உருவாக்குவதல்ல, பட் எம்பவரிங் அவர் கம்யூனிட்டிஸ், நம்முடைய சமூகங்களை அது சார்ந்த செயல்பாடுகளை ஊக்குவிப்பதுதான் டிசாஸ்டர் ரெசிலியன்ஸ் ஸ்டேட்டாக மாற்றுவதற்கான அடிப்படை என்பதை நாம் புரிந்து கொள்ள வேண்டும். ஏன் வெறும் தொழில்நுட்பங்கள் நமக்கு தீர்வாகாது. டெக்னாலஜி இஸ் நாட் அ panacea of all our problems. தொழில்நுட்பம் ஒன்றும் சர்வலோக நிவாரணி கிடையாது. பட் வாட் we have to think is, how do we mix, how do we integrate our traditional knowledge systems and modern technology is the key challenge to build Tamil Nadu as a climate resilient state. நம்முடைய பாரம்பரிய அறிவையும் இப்பொழுது தொழில்நுட்பத்தையும் நாம் எப்படி இன்டகிரேட் பண்ண போகிறோம்? நம்முடைய குடிமராமத்தையும் நம்முடைய மாடர்ன் ரெயின் ஃபோர்காஸ்டிங் சிஸ்டத்தையும் எப்படி இன்டகிரேட் பண்ண போகிறோம்? நம்முடைய மீனவர்கள் தான் அவருடைய பாரம்பரியமான ஒரு அறிவை எப்படி வெதர் ஃபோர்காஸ்டிங் சிஸ்டத்தோடு நாம் மீட்கப் போகிறோம், இன்டகிரேட் பண்ண போகிறோம் என்பதைத்தான் நாம் இப்போது பேச வேண்டும். நம்முடைய குடிமராமத்தாகட்டும், வயலமாக இருக்கட்டும், இவையெல்லாம் நம்முடைய பாரம்பரிய அறிவு. அதை எப்படி இன்னைக்கு டெக்னாலஜியை பயன்படுத்தி நாம் மேம்படுத்த போகிறோம், பயன்படுத்த போகிறோம் என்பதுதான் நாம் சந்திக்கின்ற முக்கியமான செயல்பாடாக இருக்கும் என்பதை நான் சொல்ல விரும்புகிறேன். நம்முடன் இந்த செஷனில் பேசுறதுக்கு 4 முக்கியமான நபர்கள் வந்திருக்கிறார்கள். முதல்ல திரு திருப்புகழ் அவர்கள் 2015ஆம் ஆண்டு அவர் தேசிய பேரிடர் மேலாண்மை ஆணையத்தின் அடிஷனல் செக்ரட்டரியாக, கூடுதல் செயலராக பொறுப்பேற்ற பொழுது அவர் கேட்ட முதல் கேள்வி, கடந்த ஆண்டு இந்தியாவில் எந்தெந்த பேரிடர்கள் எவ்வளவு பேர் மரணித்திருக்கிறார்கள் என்ற கேள்வியை தான் கேட்டார். அப்போ தான் அவருக்கு அதிர்ச்சிகரமாக தகவல் இருந்துச்சு. இந்தியாவில் 2014ஆம் ஆண்டு மிக அதிகமானவர் உயிரிழந்திருப்பது வெப்ப அலைகளால் என்பதுதான் அவர் கண்டறிந்த விஷயம். 2015 வரைக்கும் இந்தியாவுக்கான ஹீட் கைட்லைன்ஸ் கிடையாது. அவர் பொறுப்பேற்றுக் கொண்ட பிறகுதான் இந்தியாவிற்கான முதல் ஹீட் கைட்லைன்ஸ் அவருடைய தலைமையில் உருவாக்கப்பட்டு வெளியிடப்பட்டது என்பதை நாம் புரிந்து கொள்ள வேண்டும். இதுவரை அவர் குஜராத் மாநிலத்தில் IAS அதிகாரியாக பொறுப்பேற்று கலெக்டராக இருந்திருக்கார், பல்வேறு விஷயங்கள் இருந்திருக்கார். நான் டீட்டெயிலாக போக விரும்பல. குஜராத் ஸ்டேட் டிசாஸ்டர் மேனேஜ்மெண்ட் அத்தாரிட்டியில் செக்ரட்டரியாக இருந்திருக்கார். அதன் பிறகு தேசிய பேரிடர் மேலாண்மை ஆணையத்தின் அடிஷனல் செக்ரட்டரியாக இருந்திருக்கார். இப்பொழுது அவர் செய்து கொண்டிருக்கின்ற பணி மிக மிக முக்கியமான பணி. சென்னையை எப்படி நாம் வெள்ளத்திலிருந்தும் வறட்சியிலிருந்தும் மீட்பதற்கான ஒரு குழுவின் தலைவராக அவர் பொறுப்பேற்று அரசுக்கு ஒரு முக்கியமான ஆய்வறிக்கையை சமர்ப்பித்துள்ளார். அதன் வழிகாட்டின்படிதான் தமிழ்நாடு அரசு சென்னையை நாம் வெள்ளத்திலிருந்தும் வறட்சியில் மீட்பதற்கான ஒரு முக்கியமான திட்டப்பணிகளை செய்து வருகிறது என்பதை நான் இங்கே சுட்டிக்காட்ட விரும்புகிறேன். அடுத்ததாக நாம் எல்லோரும் அறிந்த இந்திய ஆட்சிப்பணி அதிகாரி திரு ராதாகிருஷ்ணன் அவர்கள் மாவட்ட ஆட்சித்தலைவராக நாகப்பட்டினம் மாவட்டத்தில் சுனாமிக்கு பிறகு அவர் செயலாற்றிய செயலை தமிழ்நாடு என்றைக்குமே மறக்காது. அதுவும் சில தினங்களுக்கு முன்பாக அவர் தத்தெடுத்த வளர்ப்பு பிள்ளையின் திருமணத்திற்கு அவர் சென்று நடத்தி வைத்த திருமணம் அதற்கு சாட்சி. We also have Ms. Karina Malsevka, I'm sorry, and she is from UNICEF and she is a WASH public health specialist. She works with different NGOs, government agencies for issues on water scarcity and sanitation challenges, particularly in the underprivileged communities. Her expertise plays a vital role in advancing UNICEF India's mission of promoting child rights and well-being through improved access to clean water and sanitation services. We also got Mr. Binu Matthew. He is the Chief Operating Officer of Tara Leading Edge, and he is the global consulting operations since 2016. He has got about 9 years of experience since 2011 and 2015, and also from 2004 to 2009. He specializes in climate change adaptation. He has managed sustainability, agriculture, and commodity trade projects, and he has got a variety of expertise in building resilience. He is based in Tamil Nadu, and he continues to drive strategic initiatives fostering sustainable development solutions. நண்பர்களே, இந்த செஷன் எனக்கு பொறுத்த மட்டில் மிக மிக முக்கியமான ஒரு செஷன். ஏன்னா நான் ஏற்கனவே சொன்ன மாதிரி இந்த புதிய இயல்புக்கு நாம் எப்படி தகமைத்துக் கொள்ளப் போகிறோம் என்பதை நமக்கு சொல்லிக் கொடுக்கின்ற ஒரு செஷனாக இருக்கும் என்று நம்புகிறேன். முதலாவதாக திரு திருப்புகழ் அவர்களை பேச அழைக்கிறேன்.
Religious literature, regardless of the religion, depicts hell as a very hot place. The only exception is Dante. Dante in his Inferno depicts hell as an extremely cold place. Otherwise, religious literature says that hell is an extremely hot place. In order to experience hell, we need not visit hell. How hot it will be to know, we need not visit hell, because our own earth is getting transformed into a hell now. That is why we are talking about uninhabitable earth. Experts are telling us that before old age and diseases will kill us, we will be killed by extreme heat. That is the condition of our earth now. In fact, the history of our humanity is really history of our struggle against changing climate. When I was in elementary school, I read a limerick which goes like this: as a rule, man is a fool. When it is hot, he wants it cool. When it is cool, he wants it hot, always wanting what is not. We have been driven by this desire to want something which is not, and our struggle against changing climate. In fact, Homo sapiens migrated out of Africa in order to escape the changing climate. They moved into different parts of the world. Now when this entire earth is becoming very hot like hell, where will we migrate out to? That is the position we have today. If you look at the impact of climate on heat waves on this earth, 2024 is the hottest year on record. The global average temperature went up by more than 1.5 degrees. All of us know climate change is the main reason for this. In 2024, over 2 billion people, 25% of the humanity was affected by heat waves, and they experienced 30 or more days of risky heat. I'm not going to read this list. From 2029, over the past 5 years, you can see for yourself how many countries have been severely affected by extreme heat. Estimates say that nearly 5 lakh people are dying every year due to extreme heat all over the world, and 45% of the deaths take place in Asia and 36% in Europe. We nearly lose 30,000 crore man-hours every year due to extreme heat. The situation is not very different in India. In 2015, only 9 states were affected by extreme heat, and in 2024, 23 states were affected by extreme heat. If you look at the death toll from 2005, we can see that from 2010 it has been steeply climbing, and 2015 it reached more than 2,000 people. That was the time I joined the NDMA. I was really shocked that maximum number of deaths occurred due to heat wave, and I prepared national guidelines for heat wave risk reduction, and it was not easily accepted because it was not a notified disaster. There was no notified ministry. So my seniors were not allowing that to actually become a national guidelines. I had to struggle for more than a month, and then finally it was released in April 2016. So once the guideline was issued and actions were taken, you can see that the death toll started decreasing. In 1 year it became half of 2040, and then 384, then 25, 236. In 2020 and 2021, it was reduced to single digit thanks to the lockdown. That's the main reason for that. But again, the scenario is changing. In 2024, India experienced 536 heat days. What a drastic increase from 179 in 2023. If you look at the death tolls also, it is increasing. Last year it was 364, I think. This year it is 143. So far it is 143. I am very sure the number will shoot up by 700 or 800 more. We experienced water shortage. Many parts of India suffered severe drought-like conditions. And most vulnerable people lost their livelihoods and lost their lives, particularly whose main source of livelihood is outdoor activity. Not only deaths resulted due to extreme heat wave, but heat wave related illnesses, particularly people over 65 were very severely affected. Psychological stress due to heat wave is something we normally don't talk about. But recent studies tell us that psychological impacts are much more than even physical impacts. Increased irritability and aggression, increased violent behaviors and domestic violence, cognitive impairment, exacerbating of pre-existing mental conditions, and reduced effectiveness of medicines of psychiatric medications. All this happened due to extreme heat. Our infrastructure is also damaged due to heat wave. This is again one area which we have not focused so far. Damage to roads, damage to railroads, expanding and warping resulting in accidents. Air travel is affected, reduction in air density affecting aircraft lift. And it affects telecommunication systems, health services are impacted, our supply chain is disturbed, and cold chain is disturbed, and it impacts our power generation as well as transmission. The issue is not merely the temperature. Your geographical location also matters a lot. If you are living on plains, 40 degrees and more is heat wave-like condition. If you are living in a hilly area, mere 30-degree temperature is the threshold. And if you are living in coastal area like Chennai, 37 degrees is the threshold. If the temperature exceeds 37 degrees, you will feel like being in a very hot place. And in addition to it is the night temperature. The night temperature is also increasing. The difference between the maximum day temperature and minimum night temperature is narrowing down, which means our bodies are not able to cool down during the night, hence we have these impacts. Adding to this is the humidity, relative humidity. Felt heat depends on not only temperature, but also the relative humidity. Please look at this chart. If the temperature is 34, if the relative humidity is 80, you will feel like you are in 48 degrees temperature. If the temperature is 41, a mere 45% of relative humidity will make you feel like as if you are in a 54 degrees temperature zone. So this humidity also plays an important part. IMD issues warnings. Color-coded warnings are issued by IMD. IMD is also now issuing impact-based alerts, and they tell us what we should do and what we should not do. As I told you earlier, I brought out the guidelines, first guidelines in 2016, revised it again in 2017, revised it further in 2019. In India, no guidelines has been revised 3 times within 3 years. It was done for heat wave guidelines. What do they talk about? These guidelines clarify the roles and responsibilities of the central government, state government, and district level authorities, and the roles and responsibilities of various departments in government. And it facilitated state governments to prepare heat action plans, and it issued advisories on do's and don'ts. Some of the states prepared heat wave action plans at the state level and district level and successfully implemented the same. Some of the states did not prepare. What are the lessons learned from these commissions and omissions? One is plans work. If you really prepare a good plan and if you seriously implement it, plans work. Second is interagency coordination is required. If departments start working in silos, nothing will result. We have to focus on long-term mitigation measures. Just responding to the crisis is not sufficient. We have to conduct outreach activities. We have to undertake capacity building activities, particularly for health professionals, and we have to reduce heat exposure to the outdoor workers. In addition to that, we need to change the way we plan our cities, and we have to have risk-informed land use planning. We have to change the way we build our houses and build our commercial, industrial buildings. Conserve and augment water resources. We have to plant trees, and we have to focus on health and nutrition. And those who have prepared the heat wave plans need to update it periodically. We have to provide adequate drinking water facilities, reduce pollution, because pollution and rising temperature can become a deadly combination. Again, we have to provide adequate drinking water facilities. Temporary shelter should be provided for wage employment workers like Nariga. We have to reschedule their working hours. We have to build cooling shelters, particularly in cities, so that people can come in and stay there for an hour or two and cool themselves and go away. And we have to also take care of animals. Construction of animal shelters and creation of fodder banks is important. We have to pre-position adequate veterinary medicines and supplies. And again, the importance of ORS need not be stressed. Everybody knows it. Now, what is the way forward? As the chairman said, if you have to look beyond 2024, what is the way forward? The first thing is we need long-termism. What is long-termism? Long-term is a philosophical stand that prioritizes the long-term future of humanity. It is not talking in terms of 30 years or 40 years. We should speak in terms of 500 years and 1,000 years. That is real long-termism, which means we have to focus on the future people. We should not look at our comfort. Second is we should understand the potential impact of small actions which we do. Whatever we do, how it will impact over a period of 300, 400, 500 years, we should be clear about it. A certain amount of altruism is really required if we have to focus on long-termism. Plan is only a finger pointing to the moon. We need to go beyond the plan. Plan is basically for response. We have to mainstream disaster risk reduction as part of the normal development activities. We have to strengthen our early warning system, inform the communities. Then we have to improve our institutional mechanism, improve our risk governance. We should create a post of at least one chief health officer at the state level and one at the district level to focus throughout the year on heat wave risk reduction. And we need accurate data. Data collection is necessary for informed policy decision making, which is lacking at present. We have to develop effective monitoring systems, and we need micro-analyses. At least we need ward-wise asset risk vulnerability atlas to make meaningful interventions. We need granular data to understand the local threshold. We have to focus on heat-resilient infrastructure, and we have to also focus on mental health aspects of heat wave. And we should take this urban heat island effect very seriously. We have cut down the trees, paved the entire city, built concrete jungles, built tall buildings, as a result of which the temperature in a city is anywhere between 4 to 10 degrees higher than the neighboring rural areas. And this urban heat island effect results in not only heat wave-like conditions, it is also responsible for urban flooding. So we have to have ward-wise granular data, provide cooling shelters, ensure good, adequate water, reduce pavements. Smart city has been unfortunately misunderstood as paved city. We talk about it, we are all proud sons of the soil. If you come to any city, you find no soil, only pavements. Only suns are there everywhere, no soil. Reduce energy use, improve air quality, lower greenhouse emissions. All these should be undertaken. We should focus on cool roofs. We can focus on cool pavements. And we have to integrate blue-green infrastructure along with gray infrastructure. We have to undertake a large number of research studies. One is how to reduce cooling costs and heat stress. We need more studies on health impact of heat waves. And we have to also study the hospital visits during heat wave season to understand what type of diseases are caused due to heat wave. And also we have to understand heat island effect much more. We need to map vulnerable areas and also vulnerable people. We have to conduct evaluation studies of implementation of the heat wave action plans. As I said earlier, our development should be integrated with heat wave risk reduction. See, if we do not take action, we can see what will happen. In 2040, if the temperature goes up by 1.9 degrees, how the globe is heated up. In 2090, you can see this is really a hell-like situation. Even if we start taking mitigative actions, due to the time lag, our actions to manifest will take another 40, 50, or 100 years. So heat wave risk mitigation should go beyond climate risk mitigation. We have to also focus on adaptation. So to sum up, we have to have a holistic approach. We have to have risk-sensitive land use. We have to change the way we build our cities. We have to nurture nature, take care of the environment, create water bodies, conserve energy and water. In short, we have to change the way we live. Heat wave risk reduction cannot be undertaken by government alone. It should be a mass movement. It should become a people's movement. And who will go to heaven? I started my talk talking about hell. I would like to conclude it talking about heaven. Sirupanchamulam says, those who do these 5 things will go to heaven. Those who plant trees, those who dig public wells, those who create water bodies, those who nurture rivers, and those who care for agriculture land. It doesn't say care for agriculture land, which means regenerative agriculture. I do not know if there is a heaven and if anybody will go to heaven, but I am very sure if we take all these actions, we can reduce heat waves and we can convert this very earth into a heaven. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I would now request Dr. Radhakrishnan.
Good afternoon, everybody. I think it's a very important, we have already had a discussion on financing and on heat wave, a very detailed presentation has been made by our esteemed colleague Thirupugar sir. Then of course my panelists who are there, I'll directly go to the slides. I would talk more about the impacts. When you look at the challenges of Tamil Nadu, it's easy to, when you talk of immediate past also, 6 cyclones in the last 7 years and 4 major floods again in the last 7 years, landslides and sea erosion, saltwater intrusion. So this is the kind of challenge, 3 droughts in the last 7 years, forest fires. We have moved from one extreme to the other extreme. Earlier we used to dismiss it as extreme weather events, but now this is happening fairly regularly and we need to understand that the climate change aspect has slowly and steadily bringing out and its true colors, and the impact is there to see, rather than the earlier period when people used to say this would happen, that would happen. So again, when you look at the frequencies, I leave it, we have been struck by one major disaster every year. And this time also, last 2 times you would have seen the cyclone is not crossing, or interior in the river plain areas, there has been heavy rain, extreme weather events. What are the impacts? Vulnerability, again we have 41% of the area rain fed. We have got people from all over, but again this is a symbol of what happens. Again, Kaveri Delta region, high poverty and frequent disasters, crop damage, food scarcity, inflation, number of fishermen. If you look at 10.48 lakh fishermen, when I come to tsunami aspects, I will tell. Urban flooding, again every year, forget about Chennai. All major cities are having this problem now. Now again, when you look at the expenditure, states bear 34,689 crores, center has given 7,600, but this again just a small thing of what could have been avoided. That would be the thing. Now I'll come back to tsunami, though it's not directly linked to a climate change, but again, when we talk of climate resilience, the early warning system aspect, we need to know that if you remember on 20 years back on December 26 when it happened, we had 2.5 hours time. But unfortunately, Pacific Tsunami Warning Center was the only center having that capacity. Now, of course, INCO has come in the big way. If we had warned people, we could have, Tamil Nadu alone had almost 8,000 deaths. India had an adjusted death of 10,700, including Karnikobar. Nagapattinam alone, which I had been sent on the day of tsunami, had 6,065 deaths. Just imagine if we had a robust early warning system, what would have happened? I'm just showing that, when we talk of tragedy, flood, disasters and all, this is the kind of thing which happens to people. Now we are sitting in this nice, cozy room, talking about climate change, but we need to understand the agony of that woman, the kind of losses which they do, whether it is livelihood losses or this. These are some of the things. Then the challenges of relief camp. Now my next speaker is from also going to touch on the sanitation aspect. Multiple challenges are there. And when you look at the cost, again, the kind of cost which we bear in the last 7 years, 77,000 crores. Southern District for 18,000 crores. Cyclone Maichungs, 19,000 crores. Increased revenue and fiscal deficit and crowding out of capital. There are a cascading effect of disasters. Climate change induced disasters, extreme weather events induced disaster. Now we come back to climate resilience. Ability of communities, systems and infrastructure to anticipate, prepare for, adapt to climate-related shocks. And Tamil Nadu's experience with tsunamis, flood and cyclones highlight the importance of resilience planning. When you look at agriculture, crop failure, flooding, soil erosion, agriculture productivity, climate resistance, farming practices are required, and drought resistant crops have to be done. How long we can keep on saying that, flood has come? Initially we say there is no water, delta region we couldn't do. When rain comes, excess rainfall, I think on 20th or 11th or 11 centimeter rain in Mailaduthurai. These are recent events. Earlier it never used to happen. So now impact on livelihood is, livestock is not just extreme weather and disease outbreak. Then again fodder supply issues, and we need to strengthen the infrastructure, which again my speaker before me had also mentioned. Fisheries, again the challenge is sea level rise and coastal erosion, and again impact of cyclones on fish stocks, and most importantly diversification of livelihoods and alternative source of income. Already this has been covered, but I would just mention that there are two. One's creating institutions. Very easy to say. Unfortunately, despite all our NDMA has come, SDMA has come, but ultimately institutional challenges do remain. That is where I am again and again telling, not only community-based disaster risk reduction, ecosystem-based disaster risk management, again from management on reduction aspect, communities have to get involved. Again here, this is where I think my topic was also there to talk about real role of technology and early warning systems. As I mentioned about tsunami, though not connected with the disasters, on flood, now with CWC warning and the capacity of reservoirs and ability to tell people what is the position, we should be able to alert people. If this amount of rain happens in this short while, what they have to do and all. Plus mobile applications for real-time disaster alerts, integration of artificial intelligence and Internet of Things. Now sensors are there. We still had an occasion where last year in Bangalore, somebody has gone inside and died in a subway where water was there. So these things could easily be avoided by the thing. Again, allowing people to move out of areas prone for flood. Then again, financial and policy interventions I will not cover in detail because the earlier session would have covered it. But this I would say, enhancing climate resistant infrastructure financing is the most critical aspect of it. Many a times we don't do that. We do a lot of financing, we will do a lot of cash transfers, but actually a incremental cash transfer for resilient financing would be very, very meager. This is one area to do. Resilient housing and infrastructure. When we talk of examples, now if you look at Nagapattinam, most of the buildings are cyclone resistance and all. Sustainable urban water management. This again what happens is last year in 2023, Maichum, 59 TMC of water had to be sent out. If you look at, I was that time commissioner, everybody wants a stormwater drain. Imagine the kind of water which we are pushing into the sea. There has been a lot of, Tirupur committee has given a lot of recommendation, but in that selectively we focus on one or two recommendations. We need to look at it in 360 degrees. Integrated coastal management should not be just a saying, but really it has to be brought in to practice. Traditional knowledge for climate adaptation has to be brought in, particularly in rural areas. It has a lot of thing. Scaling up of nature-based solution. Data-driven decision making for disaster management. If you look at this part of the eastern part of India has more cyclones, more challenges than the western part. But the funding is area population based. Affected area population should be the area where we need to have interventions. Again, this I will try and do quickly because time is running short. I'll come back to solutions and recommendations, strengthening policy frameworks, building capacities. Now, we don't have enough. Frequently, personnels are getting changed. And again, we have to restart from the beginning. This summit, whoever is getting in time, should need to be registered that they are all climate aware people, disaster risk resilient aware people. They need to be brought in. Then we need to address the challenges of frequent personal changes, lack of expertise, and focus on immediate relief long-term sustainability. This immediate relief overshadows long-term sustainability. Urbanizing challenges are another thing is, just after 1 month of disaster, everybody will bring, like if you look at Madipakam, was basically a waterlogged area. Now houses are built, we have to do a reverse engineering of draining it up. Similarly, if you look at other areas also, these are some of the areas where holistic planning is going to be happen. We need to empower communities. Communities need to be aware of the hazards. They should know what are their vulnerabilities, and local officials should be made to mitigate and prepare for their responsibilities. And we have to move beyond symbolism. Institutions, many a times, we have a meeting, take a photograph and say this is community. That is not. They have to be registered and active participant. Interagency coordination with NGOs or with community aware people should be in a very, very dynamic kind of thing. And we need to move away from isolated projects. Everybody in Chennai wants a stormwater drain in front of his house without understanding that, in heavy rain, the road becomes a drain. So it has to go to the next thing, and probably we need to go for other approaches also, along with, not that stormwater drain should not be there, it should be integrated and should be outcome driven. Basin level approaches need to be done, both structural and non-structural activities. Multi-year planning needs to be done. States needs to be supported with both knowledge sharing and also funding sharing. Innovating funding approaches should also be encouraged. Since it has already been covered in earlier thing, we'll do. I will not be covering that. I'll end by covering visible development with DRR features. We built resilient communities, focus was on that. Revolutionary healthcare with disaster-ready hospitals, because on the day of tsunami, the hospital went inside water. Reviving livelihood, we knew that nobody has an alternate profession. So we decided to focus on providing people alternative livelihoods. Then elevated education standards, mobility and escape routes were built, and fortified coastal defenses. Ultimately, these all, if you look at a planned kind of setup, post-earthquake in Gujarat, they did it. We learned from it. Then subsequently, we had organized kind of escape routes. This low-level bridge was removed, so people could move out. So some amount of thing. Then most of all the houses were insured. Then we had many other facilities. Then encouraging natural sand dunes and shelter-built plantation was a very, very big focus area, because we found the weakest of the plants survived, whereas some of the strong houses in the coastal area fell down. So on very rare areas, I do not advocate this, but with a very, very dense population, we had put in seawall for a 3 square kilometer area, but it's not a very environment sustainable solution. Deep sea fishing, we encourage people to take up, and of course, alternative livelihoods were done. So I would probably end with Japan's example. One of the best prepared nations after that earthquake on March 11th generated tsunami, had fire accidents, then ultimately nuclear plant disaster. So we need to understand that, we can be caught by surprise, and climate change is not a surprise. It is not that it is a black swan event coming up. It is like we are ignoring the swan and engaging communities in a very active fashion. Haiti is a very good example where, they have not invested in disaster risk reduction. For a lighter earthquake, 2 lakh people died. Whereas Chile, much higher earthquake, a lot of people survived. We need to invest in risk reduction, prioritize insurance, proactive measures for resilience, and early warnings will always help in save lives. And of course, I will end by turning plan to action. I'll end because the remaining things are all similar. You all know. I'll keep the slides back on these places, particularly youngsters and students who have come in a big way should take it back and then do it back. Then we had our many people coming, but I learnt a lot from them. They were not looking at 1 or 2 activities. When President Abdul Kalam, the then president, he came. Somebody asked him, when will you build all these houses? He said, it's not a construction program. It is a holistic habitat development program. Unfortunately, the vision which a president had, many of us do not have, and we push it as a construction program. I found much later owner-driven reconstruction doing very well. Tarangambadi, we tried it. So we need to work on it. Last but not least, this is a place where 6,065 people died in one district, out of which 2,000 died in Akrapete. That place, after 1 year, people are there. So we all have a duty towards those people, and we should ensure that, they depend on and believe that administration and people who are involved, stakeholders in disaster, we are all there for them. It should not be just on paper, but we all should be committed that, that resilience which they show, for that we need to ensure that plan is done. With that, I end my presentation, and we have other 2 speakers, after which we will take questions, if at all they are done.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. May I ask now Ms. Karina to share her thoughts on the impact of climate change on children and youth.
Okay, so over the last, yesterday and earlier today also, my two co-panelists were speaking about it. We heard about the different roles and responsibilities government and other actors play in the agenda of climate change. You may wonder why I will be now speaking specifically about children and why UNICEF really advocates for recognition of the specific not only vulnerabilities but also role that children and young people play in the both mainly adaptation measures, but also important role. We heard about the role of the communities in tackling the effects of the disaster. So I just would like to bring a little bit of a new perspective to the table as well. So when it comes to children, you may, there are actually, children have a little bit different vulnerabilities than grown-ups, not only from the perspective of the, for instance, their physicality. They breathe much faster than adults. So for instance, when it comes to the air pollution, it affects children much more than adults. Similarly, their bodies are developing and they require very specific nutrients to ensure that there is no that the malnutrition doesn't develop and that they develop well and grow healthy. Something that perhaps the adults are not as sensitive to as children. But also there are certain social aspects that we need to take into consideration when we look at the vulnerabilities of children. In case of the, for instance, disasters, especially rapid onset disasters, children can be separated from their families, and this may expose them to exploitation, to different risks which adults don't necessarily will be exposed to if facing the similar situation. So this is just a brief summary of what the what are the health and nutrition related impacts. We heard about the heat waves, of course the heat strokes, it can lead to dehydration, and dehydration later on may cause, for instance, electrolyte imbalances leading to kidney failures and so on. There are different respiratory diseases. There is also an aspect of the mental health which is not always as obvious and not always so visible as other impacts of the, for instance, of the climate change, because of the not only the socioeconomic factors, but similarly climate change anxiety, especially among young people who already hear a lot about the climate change, the risk in close future. They simply worry a lot about their future, the future of the world they will be living in. Then, of course, what I already mentioned, changing in diets may lead to malnutrition or stunting. And then there are also changing patterns of such disease-carrying vectors as mosquitoes, for instance. The malaria starts to appear in areas where it hasn't really been before. There are another aspect which climate change affects life of children is actually their education. There is the disruption of learning due to heat waves, air pollution, floods, cyclones. It's actually experienced across the India. But also we need to remember that there is also another aspect. damage to school infrastructure. And then finally, the socio-economic impact, which is actually putting affected children at risk of exploitation, child labor, trafficking, or even child marriage. And these are related to forced displacement or migration. Forced displacement due to floods, due to cyclones, forced migration due to prolonged droughts, loss of livelihoods and disruption of livelihoods. And taking into consideration the scale of India and then looking at the numbers, over 430 million children and young youth in India as per data from 2023, it's enormous number. So that's why UNICEF really tries to bring the specific needs of children and then the specific discussion on child vulnerabilities in the face of climate change to the table. Yesterday, I was extremely happy to hear that during the welcome speech by the Honorable Chief Minister that about the importance of climate change and sustainability education and awareness raising. And he was speaking about the various programs and initiatives which are happening in Tamil Nadu. So it was extremely encouraging that this is recognized by the government of the state and then by the different departments. Here I just listed few of the UNICEF specific initiatives, the high-level strategic engagements that we've done recently. It's not specific to the Tamil Nadu state, but it's specific to India. Maybe in the interest of time, I will allow you to look into it, but one of the things that I would like to highlight is that based on the study which we conducted last year among young people, we got the results that a lot of young people don't really have the adequate knowledge on the reasons for climate change, on the climate change itself, how it affects their lives, but also what can be done about it. And it's extremely important that our engagement with the Ministry of Education and with different state-level departments of education on the not only development of the training materials for the students, but also on the capacity building of teachers, because this, without adequate knowledge, teachers are not also able to convey the messages to the students. From the perspective of the nutrition, I think very important work that we are doing with the Ministry of Women and Child Development is on the Poshan mission. We have engaged in the development of the SOPs for the green and clean schools with a focus on PM Shri schools, but it can be implemented beyond those schools as well. And I'm really happy to say that we have quite a measurable successes, which is, for instance, in Jharkhand, which was actually during the SVP award program in 2017, the worst performing states, due to the work that UNICEF along with the national authorities did on the capacity building of the teachers, but also of the school headmasters. 3 of those schools have been awarded 3 years later, or 5 years later, sorry, the national award during this SVP competition, which really shows measurable result, how these initiatives impact the actual situation on the ground. Maybe the last example which I would like to say is that currently in Maharashtra we are also working with the national with the national education, with the state level education department on capacity building of students around the climate change agenda. Okay, so from the interest of time, I will move to the next slide. And then one of the things that we are trying to do as well is the evidence generation, to really see how the specific situation to India, because even though we may have some global experiences, some global expertise, it is really critical to look how this can be applied in India and what solutions can be recommended to the authorities at different levels and to different stakeholders. So only last year we finalized the comprehensive climate landscape analysis for children, where there are specific recommendations for the different sectors that UNICEF works in, specifically health education, water and sanitation, child protection, and social policy programs. And we will be working with authorities government authorities and partners at various levels to see how we can mainstream those recommendations into the programs. Now,
1 minute more.
Yes.
Already you're 2 minutes above the...
Okay, let me very quickly go. So I think actually I'm getting to my main message, and UNICEF really wants to highlight the fact that children are not only the victims of the climate change, they are actually extremely important stakeholders in all the discussions and action planning for the sustainability. And yesterday we actually had an opportunity to listen to Prasidi, whose passion and actions have already shown how much children and young people can do during the for the climate change. These are some of the achievements as well from the perspective of UNICEF's work. But I think this is what I would like to say, that it's extremely important to remember that the children are not just victims, but the stakeholders, and every such small actions can make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Our last speaker will be Mr. Benu Matthew. He'll throw some light on the critical infrastructure for climate and disaster resilience.
Thank you for the privilege of sharing the learnings that is more important in terms of critical infrastructure, climate, and disaster resilience. So I'm going to share the experience brought out from the different parts of the country and different cities where we have operating to express what exactly we are looking as critical infrastructure. I thank you for the previous speakers who have set the stage, so I can directly go into the real aspects of critical infrastructure. So I'm going to share each of the sectors in terms of how it has been done in different parts of the country so that it makes a more valuable insights. So critical infrastructure, as directly pointed out, it is not alone the physical infrastructure. It is physical, non-physical infrastructure and the human behaviors which plays a role into it. So it's also not the critical infrastructure alone. It's all about their interdependencies and how they interact with each other. So in the process, I'm going to explain the critical infrastructure in the physical realm. I'm taking the example of the CDRA study which we have done for the power infrastructure. On your right-hand side, it shows about the wind microzonation. and how the big microzonation in this past time which has changed. If you look at the Feni and the super cyclone, we had many attempts, but the microzonations, the responsibility of BMPTC was there to prepare the microzonations for entire coast, but we have still on the stage of preparation or it is not updated. Therefore, Odisha has come up with an idea of preparing a microzonation plan and to find out how their power infrastructure are resilient. So I'm not getting into the details of it. So it first gives you the exposure element, which are the exposed area that are under risk or hazard exposure levels. Then we superimposed the infrastructure. This is a transmission and the distribution lines. If you look at these, able to understand from the digital purview, which are the most critical infrastructure in that state and which substations contribute to it and which type of infrastructure are more important. It has been categorized. I'll come to the critical infrastructure taking one city as separate. So I'm going to the next slide. So what are the learnings that we have learned from that? The infrastructure on the left-hand side as the one which got impacted, and the right are not alone the learnings, but during our recovery or the relief operations, when we visit these locations, we also identify why certain infrastructure withstands and why others are not. Basically, these are the modalities by which we understand the critical infrastructure in the real terms and what are the additional measures to be given in. So this gives an understanding about the poles that you're seeing on the right-hand side are those poles which has been, in the IS code, the standards has been changed and has been utilized by the transmission lines. Of course, changing the codes and standards in India are not that easy. It's almost 3 years now. So IS 875 is still under process. I'm going back to the slide of road infrastructure now. The road infrastructure which I'm placing here is an example of Kerala, where I'm not getting into the exposure part, but I'm identifying, once you have identified the location, around 300 road networks are considered are critical infrastructures. Once it has been identified, we have to understand the one which is in red. What are the threshold levels? Threshold levels in the critical infrastructure are important to understand what are the time or how much it can withstand. Or we can plan the safe failures. For the road, we are extended beyond to understand how the catastrophic insurance can play a role, and also how we can plan our how we can, failures can be planned. In addition to that, we have identified landslides and the control measures. The challenges I again want to express here, some of them are not under the schedules of rates. These are the challenges when it comes to the implementation part at the DPR level. So how are we going to integrate it? This was the one which we have attempted, and for the 300 road it has been done. Moving on, I'm taking the other sector which is on the surface again, that is on the tourism infrastructure, which is ADB component of it. I'm not getting into the details, but want to highlight that how our state can also, from the multilateral agencies, how we can procure climate financing part of it, and what are the procedures that can be made. That is the last one part of it. If we can understand the climate allowances that are required, and what are the additional categorizations, as it has been mentioned that adaptation finances only 5% is there, so how we can do it. And once we have understand the current infrastructure and the additional infrastructure enhancement is required, this could be a possibility, and MDBs are having the categorization part that could be developed. I'm coming on the heat component, although not in the part of the climate, but taking as a building space. This is from the Mumbai experience. It is more into understanding the built environment and how it is, again, emitting the embodied heat part of it. Not just limiting to one factors. We have identified the wind speeds, also to understand the sky view factors, what are the quality parameters are there, road densities are there, and how it has to be measured and undertaken. Just going to it to understand which are the location within the city that are going to get impacted. This is more important for the city of Mumbai, where redevelopments are taking place, and many of the DSR elements have incorporated into it. Now I am coming into the critical infrastructure where I have informed about interdependencies. The infrastructure in itself are not in isolation, they are dependent on one another. If you look down, there are many parameters which comes into play and has a cascading impacts. And the losses are even more than the actual physical infrastructure. The cascading losses are even higher. So at the bottom, I have taken the power and the transport infrastructure, taking an example of Cuttack as one of the case studies where we have attempted. What we have done is to understand among all the critical infrastructure that has been identified in the previous measures, how the interdependencies are, and within that particular sectors, what are the most critical infrastructures and how can that be strengthened. This is again one of the measures by which at the cityscape, this could be an option of developing enhanced systems so that our infrastructure could not turn into a liability and it became a contingent liability rather than an infrastructural use. These were the recommendations. I'm not taking the details of it, but how we can understand within the smaller aspect of time how different sectors and which are the critical infrastructure that has to be strengthened because resources are always limited. What are the learnings that we have got from the critical infrastructures? These are very important components: technical, organizational, social, and economical. Technical infrastructure also has to look into the robustness. Maintenance is both into preventive and corrective maintenance part of it, and the designs, which I've already mentioned, how we can incorporate the climate allowances. Data is one of the important components for it. Followed by that, social and the economic parameters, which has been presented. This is the last slide. Thank you so much for the hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Binu. So, I would like to conclude. All the four panelists have given a wide range of developing adaptation and climate resilient measures. இந்தியாவில் உள்ள மாநகரங்களில் சென்னை தான் மிகவும் வெப்பமான மாநகரம். Among all the mega cities in India, Chennai is the most hottest mega city in India. And Tamil Nadu being a coastal state, we are prone to cyclones, floods, heat waves. Our Western Ghats is prone to forest fires, drought conditions, and many other things. So in the 21st century, the most critical thing is Tamil Nadu to become a climate resilient state. I think the Dravidian model of governance that the state government advocates includes not only the social justice, but all the environmental justice also, because disasters are going to wreak havoc on the marginalized communities. I think with this ending note, I would like to thank all the four panelists for giving their valuable insights. As we are running short of time, we are closing this session without the question and answers. The panelists are available after this session is over. So if you want to interact, you can interact with them. Thanks for this opportunity, and thanks to the department for giving me this opportunity to chair this session, and thanks to the panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much to all our speakers on stage. If I may take the opportunity to request our session chair to present our speakers with souvenirs. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your valuable thoughts. Mr. N. Dr. V. Thirupugar, thank you so much, sir. Dr. J. Radhakrishnan Avarkal, thank you, sir. Ms. Karina, thank you so much, ma'am. Mr. Binu Matthew. Before we draw the session to a close, if I may request Dr. Thirupugar to present our session chair with a souvenir extending our heartfelt thanks. With that, we saw how as we close the session, we also saw how the session chair threw a lovely focus on Chennai, on Tamil Nadu in particular, and what the road ahead looks like. But right now, we're going to shift gears and look at the forest management itself. With our upcoming session, we have something interesting to talk about. So, ladies and gentlemen, our final session here at the Tamil Nadu Climate Summit 3.0. We've arrived at not just the final session of the day, but also the final session of the entire summit. It's been truly an impactful journey so far, and I have to say that it does look like we're closing on truly a conversation that needs to be had on this very stage. Absolutely critical and incredibly inspiring. The session is titled Resilient Forest Management to Combat Climate Change. I think we can all agree that when it comes to forests, it is nature's most powerful allies in our fight against climate change. However, when it actually happens, as climate change is accelerating with every passing day, the challenges to each of these forest conservation initiatives have been absolutely mounting as well, and they've never been greater. With our upcoming session, we talk about this particular topic in detail. We're going to explore a few innovative strategies, how we can safeguard our forests, how we're going to be fostering an ecosystem resilience and balancing environmental protection with the needs and, of course, the support of our local communities. We're already